Okay. Hello. Hello. Greetings, greetings, Augies worldwide. There are so many of you today from all over the world. Wow. I'm in Colorado in the USA, and it is just now noon local time here. It's 1900 UTC. The United States is going to go to daylight savings time in a couple of weeks, which is on a different schedule from Europe. And we will still keep this video stream at the same time, 1900 UTC. So instead of being noon Mountain Time, that'll be 1 o'clock Mountain Time, and we're going to go from there. Thank you, Mark, for reminding me that Super Chat is open. And as Dan points out, spring is antenna season. I have the antenna for the reference station, and I'm going to put that up very soon. This next video, the Wednesday video, the main video, will talk about the setup for masts and things like that for people who don't have tall trees like me, or don't have 2 points for putting in the antenna. We'll talk about mounting options for the antenna. I want to emphasize with the reference station, I'm building this reference station that's a specific design, okay, and I'm going to try and hit all the parts and pieces, everything from what software to use for digital to this kind of thing. Please understand that you may find that your circumstances are different. You may need a different antenna. You may need a different power supply, something like that. By the way, I got an interesting email from a company that sells Samlex power supplies saying they had gotten a bunch of people buying their power supplies who cited me as the source of that. And their price is really good. It's only $111 US, but you have to pay for shipping. So I've asked them for particulars before I show that on here. Now, I want to point out here that Peter Balsamo, KC3OLY, and Brent, KI5HXM, your questions got garbled, and I apologize for that. Now, I have a question for all of you. I have often said that you ought to send your question to hamradioanswers@gmail.com, and yet I get very few questions at hamradioanswers@gmail.com. So I'm wondering if you're sending them and they're not coming through. I had a problem with my regular email address, my business address. The tax people sent me a message. My wife got it, I didn't, and it was emailed to both of us. So if there's a problem with messages not getting through, let me know, and I'll try and work with Gmail, which is what I use, to make sure that those messages don't get kicked out. They're not showing up in spam filter either. I checked the spam filter, and they're not there. So my business email, like I got a request in here to speak at a ham club. My business email is castler28@gmail.com. Now, if you ask technical questions at that address, I'll just forward them over to Ham Radio Answers, and we'll cover them on Saturday. But if you have a business question of some kind, please use the business address for that. So thank you, John Pinker, and let's see, Dan Trainer, and Nigel Lawrence, and Mark Piran. Thank you very much for using the Super Chat feature. Much appreciated. Yeah, I've heard that, what was that email? Castler, CASLER28@gmail.com. Okay, Castler28@gmail.com is business address. If somebody sends me a technical question, I'll just forward that over and we'll answer it in the Saturday live stream. So the news on the reference station is I've got the antenna, it's in a bag, and I've got some coax. I ordered coax with connectors already on it, so we can make the reference station basically something you buy and assemble rather than have to build parts and so on. I know I've gotten some flack from people saying hams ought to be able to build. Well, you know, yes, eventually they should. I think everybody at some point should build a 40-meter dipole from scratch. And I've got videos, a couple of videos up on how to do that. When I had that problem with my hex beam when we had the ice storm and it finally bounced back, well, it took the dipole down and it's packed under the snow. So the snow is starting to melt. Hopefully we'll have that again. Inverted V's usually work very well in yards without tall trees. My trees are about 25 feet high. They're pinyon pines. And we have some junipers. We live in the desert. We're in the high desert, 7,000 feet. And so we have pinyon pines and junipers and 11 inches of rain a year. So the trees aren't very tall and certainly aren't the kind that you would want to attach an antenna to. So what I'm going to use is 2 pieces of chain link fence top rail. I took some pictures yesterday at Home Depot to show what they are and how much they cost. And we'll be talking, after we get the antenna up, we'll be talking about grounding. And we'll set up the ground rod. Okay, so, yeah, I've heard ISP throttling. Well, yeah, it does happen. Let's see, what antenna? Is it the MFJ 4020 dipole? I looked at that. Go back and look at my videos. It's right here. It's an Alpha Delta DX EE. DXEE. It's 40 meter and up antenna. It's part of it is a trap dipole, part of it is a fan dipole. I picked it because it was just $150 and a lot less expensive. Because if you get something like the AV640, which is a real nice little vertical, same gain as the dipole, it's like $600. And it comes in 200 parts. So that comes be quite the kit building exercise. Now with antennas, we got to be really flexible because people have different size yards, etc. Okay, building a dipole should be a prerequisite for the extra exam. I like to think that there ought to be a couple years experience required for that. On how to mount the reference antenna in an attic, yes, you can. You can do that. You'll need 40 feet straight. And the roof should not have foil on it or a metal roof. But if you've got a composition shingle roof and plastic sealer on the covering, you're probably okay with that antenna in there. You will need to tune it. Is there enough oxygen here? Well, I don't know that there is, but I keep one of those inhalers in my pocket because I have asthma. Let's see. Okay. Let's go to questions. I've got some left over from last week that we didn't quite get to, but fortunately we only go back to February 16th here on February 29th. My understanding is the people who are born on February 29th need only celebrate one birthday every 4 years, so they age at a far slower rate than the rest of us. This one is from Lee Johnson, N4WYE, and he's got quite a lengthy question here. Let's see if I can get it down. Oh, he's talking about noise from power supplies. And says that he had a problem with the PowerWorks SS30DV, which does have a little bit of noise. And then he talks about an MFJ 4230 MVP. The same noise was back. And then he talks about how a Linko allows you to move the switching frequency so it won't interfere with your transmissions, which is an admission that they will if you don't adjust it. Lee, I am going to point a finger at your grounding system as the probable culprit here. You need to get your station grounded really well, and you need to get the power supply grounded, and there needs to be a bond between your station ground, which should be right outside your station, or even directly below it if you have access to the dirt in, well, you can't really put one in a crawl space because it's got to be 8 feet high to start. Or you can use a new for ground or something like that. But this sounds like a grounding problem. And your antenna leads need to come to the ground rod where there will be a lightning arrestor like the Alpha Delta Transi Trap, which is what we're going to select for the reference station. There are other makers of very fine traps, transient traps. That needs to be grounded to your ground rod. So that's going to ground the shield side of your antenna. And then it should come from there into the station where you have a common single point ground right in the station. And I suspect that will solve most of this problem. This next one is from Keith Sears, Lima Zulu 4 Delta Juliet, which I'm not sure where it is. I would say Argentina, but I'm not sure. Bulgarian. He says it's Bulgarian. Thank you for the informative videos. My question is, I'm coming to Orlando for my first visit to Disney at age 66 and plan to bring a 2-meter 70 centimeter handheld with me. I have copies of my license from the UK, where he's originally from, Golf 1 Romeo Hotel Bravo, and my Bulgarian, where he lives since 2005. While over here, what call sign do I use for my portable station? Go to IARU.org. That's the International Amateur Radio Union. And they will tell you what you need to do. I think what you will do, probably easiest, is to sign with your call sign G1 RHB portable W4 in Florida, I think. Portable W4. And then that identifies you. You don't need to get a new license over here or anything like that. It's automatic. As long as, because there is an agreement between Great Britain and the United States. I don't know about Bulgaria, but the IARU.org website should help you with specifics. Hello from Ontario, downtown. What's the best opinion for an HF antenna mounted on the balcony? MFJ has a balcony antenna. It's a hamstick. You clip it to the railing, and it sticks out at about a 45-degree angle. And then it has a counterpoise you just throw back somewhere in the house. And that might be something to try. It's not very expensive, and it does get you an antenna outside. Dennis Malcolm pointed out a chameleon F-loop. Lots of noise, very faint speaking heard. Yeah, you got to get that thing outside of the apartment. If you don't have a balcony, put up literally, tape it to the window. Not with duct tape, with non-conducting tape, like packing tape or something. Tape it to the window and then see what you can do with that. Okay. This is from John Nichols. Says, in a recent S-Day video, you looked at the grounding system at N6GS. Yes, I did. He showed a box on the outside of the wall with several through-the-wall feeds for various antenna connectors. And he says it looks like an off-the-shelf unit. It is. And in the video, when I show that, at one of the points where I show that, I put at the bottom of the screen the URL for that. So go back and check that out, and if that URL is not there, let me know, and I'll find it again and put it in there. I've been thinking of getting something like that for myself because I've got this mess down at the ground rod with 6 lightning arrestors clustered right there on the ground rod. It'd be nice to spread them out just a little bit. I'm scheduled to test for technician on March 14th. Good luck with your testing. The instructors at work1.org list my technician videos as part of their syllabus. They're welcome to embed my videos in any website. That way, every time you look at it, I get credit on YouTube for that. It really helps. This next one is from Eddie, K6SDW. He says, at Pacificon last year, I bought a new SDRPlay RSP1A using the latest SDR Uno software from the company. I noticed you reviewed this, so I'm guessing you didn't have problems with no signals. No, I did. That's not quite true. I did have problems with no signals, and let me show you why. I'm going to bring up the SDR Uno software, and let's give it a moment. Okay, now I'm going to put this. This isn't going to be very big, unfortunately. Okay, I've got to go up to, come on. It comes up on the wrong screen, sorry. Okay, the top screen. See this little thing down here? This little panel right here is the main panel for SDR Uno. It's called main, okay? Now you see this right here, RF gain. When you first open the software, it's way down there. Now, I really got hung up on earlier editions of this. They said attenuation. And I thought, well, I don't want any attenuation, but that's not what it was. You had to, that was maximum attenuation down there. This was minimum up here. You've got to turn the RF gain up all the way. Sorry for it being so small, I can't make it any bigger. Well, I could, I suppose, if I spent a few hours researching how to do that. Okay, let's go back to the headshot with logo. Okay, that's that right there. So that is what I would suggest that you try. Wire, 50 feet of wire, 12 inches in the clear should hear just fine for that radio. Make sure that you've got the correct adapter, because that RSP1A has an SMA connector on it. It's also helpful. I feed it with coax from an antenna switch up here, because I've got a couple, 3 antennas that I feed into it. And it's grounded at that point. The shield side is grounded. The box itself is plastic, so it's not like you can ground it. Let's see, I have a QTH in Muskoka, north of Ontario. College is sitting on solid rock. Are there alternatives to driving a copper rod into the ground? Yes. If you can somehow dig a trench right down to the bedrock, okay, lay a ground rod in there sideways and put concrete over it, or put this ground enhancement material over it. And concrete might be a little better, but well, it's the mixing concrete, mixing jam are about the same difficulty. And then cover it back up with dirt, and you'll have to make do with that, and I think it'll actually work pretty well. Rock is a very good conductor of electricity, so is concrete. I'm talking about for grounding. You wouldn't think of it normally, you think of it as an insulator, but if you look at the Motorola book on communication shelters, you'll find that they actually recommend that you pour concrete around the ground rods, and that you have a loop all the way around the building that's in concrete too. So, hello from Ontario. Love my homemade fan dipole that I got from a video watched on YouTube. Can't wait to see yours on Alpha Delta. Well, it should be up very soon. Okay, yeah, and with that RSP1A, check that out. It's a wonderful little radio. The learning curve is a little steep. So print out the manual and follow the procedures, check everything off. Okay, this is from Oscar Brown, who is a clinical professor in Department of Pediatrics. He says, Dave, I watched you for some time, motivated to get my tech, and 3 weeks ago my general ticket. Good. On to extra. I'm retiring this spring and the time is right. I am concerned that after listening to you and knowing you had an FTDX I wanted to emulate, so now I note that your new reference station of the IC7300. I actually purchased an FTDX 300 about 2 months ago from HRO and still in the process of setting up the shack. I will tell you that the FTDX 3000 is a fine radio. It's an outstanding radio. I love it. I picked the IC7300 because it's kind of, it's got the latest in technology. It's got wonderful waterfall screens and things like that. If you didn't already have the 7300, I would say get an ICOM. No, I'd say get an ICOM 7300. But now that you have the 3000, it'll work just fine. Just know that in future videos, I will use the 7300 as my basic radio for demonstrations and discussions and things like that. So he says he has been to Crested Butte, which is a ski resort sort of near here. It's over north of Gunnison. This is from Brad Rich. He argues about tube amplifiers versus transistor amplifiers. He has an ACOM 2100 that he really loves. That is a tube amplifier. Tube amplifiers are going to be around for a while because high power RF transistors are expensive. So for quite a while, a few years to come, 5 years maybe, the transistor amps are going to be more expensive than the tube amps. Now he notes that the tube amp is more flexible for tuning. That is true. The old tube radios were more flexible for tuning than the transistor radios. That's why almost all transistor final based radios have built-in tuners, so you can touch them up, but they only go up to about 3-to-1 unless you get the 10-tech. If I wish they were still around. They say they are. I'm not really sure they're selling. I'm not seeing any advertising. They were at Dayton this last year, and I hope to see them again at Dayton this year. And yes, my wife and I are going to Dayton. A pi network on the output of a tube tuner can, shall we say, cover a multitude of SWR sins, whereas the transistors will not. They need to work into a fixed resistive impedance and need a tuner. But eventually, just as happened in radios, the transistors will be less expensive than the tubes, and the tubes will be forced off the market. Thank you, Brad. Or Bob Slovic, thank you so much. Alternative for some folks that live in apartments. Find a good friend that has some land, set up a station in their house and use remote radio. Yes. I have a friend, he's quite elderly now, which means he's even older than I am. He had an apartment problem like that, and so he set up his truck or car, whatever, for mobile operations. And when he wanted to operate, he'd just go park at a park and operate from there for as long as he wanted. And he had an amplifier in his car. I have that amplifier here, although I'm operating it on a power supply rather than a battery. But it is really cool. Brad also points out that that 7610 that I tested, he is going to be selling that, and he will let an Augie have it for $2,000 plus shipping, about $50 insured. And he said he'll accept $200 and the balance just before shipping. If no Augie is interested, he'll be selling it for $2,500. His call sign is N6GR. N6GR. If you want to get in touch with him and get yourself a very slightly used 7610, the very one I tested here on this station. And Bob, thank you for your kind words. Will coronavirus affect electronic part supplies? 102 years ago, there was a major flu epidemic in the United States that killed millions, several millions of people. Now, granted, that was back before a lot of technology happened, but organizations would not meet, people didn't go outside, the economy tanked. This was right after World War I. It was a major public health problem in the United States. It's 102 years ago. Look up the 1918 flu epidemic. It killed millions. It was terrible. Churches would not meet on Sundays, all this kind of stuff like that. That would be the worst case that we would go into with the coronavirus. It's already frightened the stock market. I've seen the effect on my retirement plan. I'm hoping that a little stability will ensue, but there's going to be a lot of talk and a lot of falderall spreading around for the next few months. I would recommend that you take the usual precautions. Will it affect the electronics pipeline? The answer is eventually yes. Eventually yes. It's already affecting the pipeline to the United States for things that we foolishly don't have plants for in the United States anymore, like some medical supplies, medical masks, things like that. We're letting China be the manufacturer for the entire world. And so what will happen, I would imagine, is that some people in the U.S. are going to be rushing to make those things because there's a shortage of them right now. I'm fortunate. I've got a box here at home that I've had for a while. When the bird flu was big news, it didn't it created quite a bit of panic. And I know that I worked for IBM at the time, and at the very highest levels of the company, they were planning for how to continue operations in the event of a bird flu pandemic. And they had all kinds of plans in place so people could work from home and all of these kinds of things. We'll see the same thing here if it gets any worse. We're at the leading edge of it. It could peter out, or it could become a real problem. Just take the 1918 flu epidemic as an example of what could happen. And remember that you can operate your ham radio from home and still have communications with other people. So I don't have a crystal ball that's any clearer than anybody else's. If you run your antenna through the branches of a tree, I wouldn't bother. If you have insulated wire, you should be okay. You should be okay with insulated wire, not with bare wire. Still researching offset dipoles. Yes, there is a book by the ARRL. I've already put it away. That talks about dipoles and has some stuff in there on off-center fed dipoles. They are also readily available from suppliers. A number of different suppliers, including, of course, old reliable MFJ. Dave, for yearly antenna maintenance, is there anything you need to do to the radio plate? Mine seems to be oxidizing. That's very unusual because it's supposed to be stainless steel. It shouldn't be oxidizing. Contact DX Engineering and find out what you can do. You ought to be able to take it out of there, polish it up, and put it back. If there is oxidizing at the connections, that's a different story. Make sure that the bolts you're using to attach the radio wires are in fact stainless steel bolts. Because if you put aluminum in there, the aluminum versus the copper is going to create corrosion. Okay, the stainless steel won't. If you have to bring the copper directly to an aluminum bolt, put the aluminum bolt in, put a washer, bring the copper in, put another washer on top of that, and then put the nut on. Better yet, go down. Home Depot doesn't have a real good selection of stainless steel parts. Trying to remember the name of the outfit in Montrose. I'll think of it in a while. That sells fasteners, and you can get anything you want. Get stainless steel bolts, nuts, washers, and everything to use with that radial plate. And then the copper will be okay. For that matter, aluminum would be okay. But aluminum and copper do not mix. They will corrode. Let's see. Virus cannot live on your electronic devices. Yeah, but it can live for a while. That's the thing. The coronavirus is fairly long-lived out in the open. It will die in the open eventually, but it will live for hours. So, yeah, the 1918 flu was a horrible experience. Bare wire in a wet tree. Slide some insulation on it. Slide some tubing. Get a hose, a real cheap hose from Home Depot, and cut off the ends and slide it over the wire where it goes through the tree. DX Commander radial plate is aluminum, then use aluminum with it, and use little crimp-on connectors for the copper, and then solder them so that you don't ever have copper directly touching aluminum, and it will work. By the way, aluminum it gets covered with an aluminum oxide, which protects it, but you want to make sure you cinch down those radials tight, because you got to cut through that layer of aluminum oxide. Put a star washer in there somewhere. YouTube stopped supporting Google Chrome and WinXP. Yeah. So I have to chat open a Firefox, which doesn't support 8.05. I'm sorry. Don, I think it's a little past time you upgraded. That's been a number of years. I loved WinXP. I thought Windows 7 was the apogee of Windows. And I thought Windows 8 and Windows 10 were a slide downhill, but I've got Windows 10. And go down to Home Depot. I'm sorry, Office Depot, or Staples, or Office Max. New computers aren't that expensive. Yeah. Fastenal, that's it. Thank you very much, Philip. Fastenal. Go to Fastenal and tell them what you need. 1-inch stainless steel, they're 1 inch long, 1/4 inch shank with 20 thread counts per inch, and then get the same nuts that go in there, and get stainless steel washers, star washers, lock washers. Okay, and then use that with the DX Engineering radial plate, and make sure that copper doesn't ever, well, copper won't touch anything aluminum in that case. Let's see, Ace Hardware, large selection of stainless steel hardware. I'll have to check them out. We've got an Ace here in Montrose. SARS-2 can last 9 days on a stainless steel surface. Yeah, it's problematic. Just be careful. Don't touch your face. The virus does not go in your skin. It goes in your mouth, your nose, and your eyes. So if you rub your eyes, you're rubbing in whatever bacteria are on your hands. And I had a doctor years ago when I was complaining of a perpetual sinus infection. He said, wash your hands every chance you get. Don't pass a faucet without washing your hands. And don't ever touch your face. So if you have to touch your face, wash your hands thoroughly first. So there's my advice, yes. My wife watches your videos all the time with me. She finds me handsome. I don't know if I want to tell my wife that or not. Maybe I will. Windows ME and Win8. Yeah, they're, yeah. England brass fastening seemed to work well with steel and copper. There is if you're a metallurgist, there is a way of grading connections for the amount of corrosion potential. Note that just touching aluminum to copper does not create the corrosion, but when you get water in there or other weather, that can facilitate the corrosion. I was once on a Navy ship that had a steel hull and an aluminum superstructure. And I talked with one of the, let's see, the Air Force equivalent would be Master Sergeant. Not sure what they called them in the, maybe it was a six striper. And I says, that's stupid. He says, well, they told us that they had something holding the two apart, a stainless steel skirt or something like that. He says, but look. And he pointed to me at all the corrosion there was right along that line where the aluminum came down and hit that flashing. And I said, that's got to be one of the stupidest things I've ever heard of. But they did it. By the way, aluminum is more common as an earthly element than iron. It's cheap stuff, but it's very energy intensive to make either iron or aluminum. Your local boat and marine service center may have the correct fastener size also. Yeah. Yeah, toroids do help, Optical Man Jeff. Am I picking my nose? I'm sorry. I certainly am trying not to do that. I just told you to keep your hands away from your face. Oh my goodness. You can upgrade to Ubuntu Linux for free. Yeah. Add ultraviolet band C-clamps in your high-vac equipment, or your portable air purifier should have UV lamp inside. Wanted to upgrade to Win 7, but had to go with Vista first, but Vista didn't upgrade properly. No help from Microsoft except to clean the install. Have too many programs on WinXP. A lot of those will come over to Windows. Now, the problem with Windows 10 is it's 64-bit. It will do 32-bit, but it will not do 16-bit. So if you have any 16-bit programs in Windows XP, you're correct. They will not run on Windows 10. Chief Master Sergeant in E7. 6 stripes in the Air Force. Named CPO or Chief Petty Officer. Okay, thank you. Called galvanic response, yes. And know all about this in marine business. Salt is extremely corrosive. Bauxite. DX Commander has the aluminum plate, but you use crimped and soldered connections, so copper never touches the aluminum. Okay. But both the connectors and plate have a very slight white film. The slight white film is the aluminum oxide, and not to be worried about. It actually protects the aluminum. Many Win programs to leave now. Yeah, I know. Yeah, you don't connect to the internet with that computer. Had all aluminum topsides with steel hull. Serves for 50 years plus without link syncing, so it must have been okay. I don't know, maybe they could try something electrical to reduce the corrosion there. Okay, we're getting off track here. Easy to do. Jeff, thank you very much for that. I appreciate it. This is from Tommy Clemenson. Oscar Zulu 1 Tango Hotel Charlie. He's in Denmark. And he's in Grid Square, Juliet Oscar 55 Juliet Hotel. He's right now studying Part 6 and 7 in the extra material and find it hard to understand. See the videos. I've seen most of the books from Fast Track Cam and could not buy general math in Denmark, but the technician math, general and extra math. No problem understanding the tech book and the general book. Yeah, the general introduces the concept of complex numbers. It turns out that normal numbers, counting 1, 2, 3, don't fully describe nature. There's a lot of things in nature that we call reactants in ham radio that just are not described properly in terms of resistance. They're sideways to it. In fact, literally orthogonal to it. And so the French originally, I can't remember who it was who invented the imaginary numbers. They're called imaginary. They're not imaginary. They're a very real thing. But the mathematics of understanding complex numbers, I have an article I sent to QST. They say they're going to publish it, and it's going to be on this very subject. But it's been a year and a half. They haven't published it. The complex numbers help you explain reactance and combine resistance and reactance properly so you can see the effect of both. And you run into things like phase angles and all that sort of stuff that you don't run into with just normal resistors and ohm meters and stuff like that. So that is introduced in the extra curriculum. It's not in the general curriculum. There's a couple formulas here and there in the general curriculum that kind of help you a little bit understand reactance. But the fact is it can't be understood unless you pick up what's called complex algebra. Complex algebra, which is a really bad name for it, combines the imaginary and the real into something complex. And you can do it in either polar coordinates or Cartesian coordinates. And I describe that in my videos, in the lesson videos for the extra. Here's the thing. Excuse me. Man, that probably went out as a blast. I see my doctor in a week or so about the asthma. Imagine you've always been taught that negative numbers don't have a square root because -1 times -1 is +1. +1 times +1 is +1. That negative, there's no two numbers you can multiply together to get a minus number. Let's just imagine that there is. We'll call it I for imaginary. Well, engineers call it J because I is used for current. We use J. J is the mythical imaginary square root of -1. Well, it turns out you can do all kinds of things with J. J squared is -1. But it has come to symbolize the imaginary part. And so you see these numbers with either if they're in Cartesian coordinates, you got a real part and an imaginary part with a J by it. The J always is, it's sometimes called the imaginary operator or the complex operator. And if you do it in polar coordinates, you can say, okay, I've got a resistor, a capacitor, and an inductor, and the impedance at a certain frequency is 50 ohms at an angle of 20 degrees. It just means they're out of phase. The current and voltage will be out of phase. There. You now know all about imaginary numbers. Actually, for the super chat, if you go down to the bottom where it says say something, and right underneath that there's a little happy face, so you can put a smiley in there. There's also a square with a $sign in it. That's the one you push for super chat. Okay, let's see. Quadrature in electronics, you bet. Windows 10's a great OS. Yeah, and they keep changing it. They've gone to a very, very different business model where they're constantly upgrading Windows 10. And it's frustrating because things I've got figured out suddenly don't work anymore. If you read the books for the test, you'll pass the test. Well, when you get in the extra, you need to study. You really do. You just infected us through the internet. Well, I hope so. I hope you look up complex numbers or the complex plane on Wikipedia and learn all about it. Statue of Liberty is copper outer covering with an iron frame. They used rubber to insulate it, but it wore out. They had to refurbish it in the 80s. Yes, the head of Chrysler, and I can't remember his name, Lee Iacocca, took that project on and made it happen because they were afraid they were going to have to take the Statue of Liberty down and Congress wasn't going to vote any money for it. So they used copper that already had the green patina from the Chrysler building when they were redoing that. How many advanced license holders? I've been advanced for over 40 years. I was advanced for the better part of 20 years. The oiler got it all figured out. Yep. Can you put a nail in the tree and use the tree for an antenna? No, the tree is too well grounded. And the sap is pretty high resistance. Trees are somewhat vertically polarized, but they spread all over everywhere. Trees are, by and large, given their size, generally transparent to radio waves. Oh yeah, I close the door to my shack when I get on the air. Let's see, go take the extra test. Yeah, Windows as a service. Well, that kind of is what it is, yeah. This computer is an HP gaming laptop, it claims. I thought it would be nice and fast. I've been kind of disappointed with it. It just says Pavilion. It doesn't have a model number on it. I'm sure it has one on the bottom. People who like Linux love it. There's no such thing as liking Linux. You either love it or not. How did your hex beam work out? Do I still use it? Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Any modifications? No. Mine goes and turns the oven on. Oh, boy. How do you open a toroid core? You don't. You will break it. A toroid core is made of powdered fragments that a binder has been added to it, and they're pressed until they are solid. Okay? You can't break one open. They won't shatter on you. So, okay. Back to questions here. Man, am I getting... let's see. Okay. Study CW with an old eye doctor on 10-meter radio every day. Well, good for you. 52 years old, single, just starting to learn the head copy in CW. We'll get on the air with that. That is cool. That was Tommy Clemenson. I've got another email in here from him. This one is from Bob Beck, KN4ZZI. I have 6 of the Eaton AFCIs. Arc fault circuit interrupter. Can you recommend an AFCI that is not affected by amateur RF? The newer ones are better at that. Go down to Home Depot or Lowe's and get yourself some the newest AFCIs, or they're usually called GCFIs. And install them in your house and see if that helps. Just buy one first and see if that helps. Okay, this is from Lauren Chandler. I am going to be speaking at the Utah Valley Hamfest 2020, which is the weekend prior to Dayton. So I'm going to go over there and give my talk, come back. We have a day off, and then hop in the truck and trailer and go off to Dayton. So if you're in that area. This is from Brad Tombaugh. Thanks for the videos. Remember seeing in 8105 that you featured a QRP radio kit from Oak Hills Research. And he lists here an obituary for Marshall Emm N1FN, a longtime QRP advocate, owner of Morse Express, Oak Hills Research, and Amico, is now a silent key as of February 17. I'm very sorry to hear that. He had a number of QRP kits that were getting a little long in the tooth. I have one here. It's for 20 meters. It's CW. And there it is. I use it. At one point I used it a lot. I tend to go with the latest QRP kit, whatever I built the last. Oh, and thank you, Don. I appreciate that very much. Oh, clamp-on toroids. If they are sliced into two parts, you can pull them together. You want to get as much toroid to toroid contact as you can. Even a slight distance between them can cause the permeability to go way down. So wrap them, you know. There's that tape from 3M that you kind of stretches, black tape that you can wrap to waterproof coaxes. Use something like that to stretch it to keep some pressure on that. Sorry to hear about Marshall Emm. It's EMM. He was N1FN, and he was out of Colorado, out of Denver. If branches touch your wire antenna, will it affect your signal? Yeah, I wanted the CPU in this thing. It's got an NVIDIA GeForce GTX in it. I wanted it for video editing. And it does render videos fairly quickly. I'm very pleased with that part. But I've got a 4K monitor set up here, and then the 2K, the 1080p monitor is down here. And that monitor up there will make the machine blue screen a lot more often than I like. Not very often, but about once a month. This is from Don Bathkert, K6BLG. In your YouTube all about Baluns, you say voltage Balun at least twice while showing a current Balun. Sorry, I probably did. I make mistakes. Current Balun you show is a model 41241 from Balun Designs. That particular one, the big one, is a voltage Balun. It's not a current Balun. Yeah, I opened it up and looked, so because I thought it was a current Balun too, but it was a voltage Balun. Thank you from KD2QMZ. Yeah, by the way, if you have trouble with your internet, you know, speeds, or you need to study where you can't get to the internet, I do have the Technician General and extra videos on thumb drives. Go to dcastler.com/support, and they're listed there. Note, those are the same videos that you see on YouTube. I had a return from a guy who said, yeah, I thought these were different. No, they aren't. So, you know, of course I refunded his money in full. And if you run into a problem, let me know. I had somebody else who had a bad one, and I says, just toss it and I'll send you another one. So, okay, this is from Daniel Witz, WS3M. Reference station is a great idea. Now, he is visually impaired. Whenever I see somebody who wants to get into ham radio, I tell them to go to Handy Hams, HANDIHAMS, and I think it's probably a .org. But just look up Handy Hams. It's an organization of handicapped amateur radio operators, and they know everything about what to buy, how to get voice prompts on your radio, so on and so forth. And he points out at his Kenwood TS-590SG has a voice guide option. And he talks about how on ICOM there's a module called HamPod that will control the radios, and a wave node module to help tune the antenna. He says he took the suggestion and used long staples on the ground radios. That does help. Used the MFJ 1932 radio kit, which has 8 14-foot radials. Okay, yeah, check out Handy Hams and persevere. Keep doing it till you make it work. AFCI is not the same as GCFI. AFCI is for bedroom spaces. We don't use on circuits with motors and compressors. Yeah, I've got a fan in our bedroom, ceiling fan, and it will every so often pop the stupid circuit breaker. Microsize Surface Book rocks. Lenovo, greetings from Northwest Wisconsin. Barnacle Brad, how are you? Anyone have experience with the combined breakers? I don't. I got the i5 because it has no moving parts. Just ordered the general thumb drive yesterday. Yes, it's on the table to go out. It won't go out today. It'll probably go out Monday. i5 is 4-core with no hyper-threading. Let's see, what do you use for VM? We use VMware at work. I don't do anything like that. Crypt Skills is handicapped ham. Congratulations on persevering with the hobby. OG get together in Dayton. When I'm in Dayton, I often hang around. I don't have a booth of my own. I often hang around Tom W5KUB. He has a Tuesday evening live stream, and he has a booth there, and he does his live stream during the whole Dayton, and I will often hang around there, and he usually has interesting people. There's an astronaut who comes by and signs autographs and stuff. It's right across from, well, the tables change every year, so, but he's in the middle building way in a corner. So look him up. I will be wandering around. I've lost 30 pounds since last year, so I will probably be more mobile. Last year I rented a little scooter so I could get out to see the Swap Fest. Hopefully this year I'm going to try and do that without even the cane. And I've still got a couple months. Maybe I can lose a few more pounds before I get there. I feel so much better than I did last year. Haven't heard of handicaps. I have physical disabilities. Yes, I am bipolar. Some people consider that a disability. I don't. I consider it a special ability. But, you know, I want to learn to fly. And I have researched Class 3 medicals, and I've come to the conclusion there is no way I will pass one being bipolar. So there are other licenses. There's a sport license where you don't need to pass a medical. You just use your driver's license, figuring that if you are safe enough to drive, you're safe enough to fly a light sport aircraft. And then there are a few aircraft that don't even require a license of any kind. So I'm going to have to limit myself to them because the FAA considers me hopelessly handicapped, and they just don't make exceptions for it. The thing that did it was a number of years ago, there was that a pilot who worked for Gray Wings or Eagle Wings or something in Europe, and on a flight from Italy to Germany, he forced the airplane. He was the co-pilot. He was bipolar, and he was running very manic and suicidal, and he flew that airplane right into the side of a mountain. And that is terrible, and it's got a lot of people spooked about bipolar. You say bipolar and people just freak and run for the exits. I'm bipolar. It's under very good control. I have a psychiatrist whom I see about every 3 months or so, depending on what he thinks I need. And I'm on very good medications, and this is important, I manage my environment. So it's low stress. We have a very low stress household, And that's the kind of life I lead. Anyway, enough on that. Power poles seems to be taking the DC world by storm. Absolutely, they are. The only issue I have with power pole connectors is that they do not lock in place. Bob, so I'm not an electrician, but I've done my own work. Yeah, if you are Austin Pilot, Michael, good. Yeah, most places a homeowner can do his own electrical work. Note that you may require a permit even so. So check with your building department. Tom Medlin, thank you. Tom Medlin, W5KUB. From Lompoc, hello. Yes. Next to the Regal booth. Yes, right across from the Regal booth. That's right. Let's see, 30 pounds, yeah. Use a cane, but yeah, the scooters are like $75 a day, and believe me, I rented it one day. It was worth every penny because I was able to see the whole thing out where the flea market was, and do so easily. Diverse abilities, yes. Yeah. Sorry if this was already asked. Any ETA on the new videos for the new extra class coming in June? I hope to pick up the extra class manual at Dayton. I hope. I picked up the tech manual last year at Dayton, but the year before the general one wasn't ready yet. So the problem with updating the videos is it's on top of everything in my schedule. So I've got to figure out a way of doing that a little more effectively. I understand there are some significant changes in the extra, so I may have to update more than I thought. My friend has diabetes and he cannot get a pilot's license. Yes, that's a problem because of the insulin. And what they're concerned about is not hyperglycemia, but hypoglycemia. You just think people would know how to take care of it. Let's see, I'm lost track here. Fly Sporter Ultralight, that's what I'm going to do. Very interested in kite antennas. That will be very interesting, Dan. I would like very much to hear about that. Crip skills, student pilot license 16, soloed, broke my back before 12 hours. Now would need to be adaptive to fly. They do adapt. There are airplanes that will calculate the rudder inputs for you. The airplane's not rudderless, but your controls are rudderless. So you can fly even as a paraplegic. Okay. That does happen. Power poles are a pain to come. Not that bad. Oh, I will be showing that. Did my solo when I was about 35. Hang in there. I will do that. The flea market is exceptional itself. You cope in 85%. The 15 that drag the medicated ones down. There are times when this is a very strange medical term called a breakthrough. And what they mean is that the illness breaks through the medication barrier. And that does happen from time to time. And believe me, I know it when it happens. Okay, Don. Diabetic as well, but no flying for me. Inner ear issue. Can't fly or dive. Got my pilot's license, age of 63. Bucket list. Yes. Please tell me, Dave, is my 450 ohm feeder a part of my doubler antenna? If it's mismatched, it can be. Former 747 pilot with Cathay Pacific. You've traveled the world. Past, did you ever host a Q&A on the amateur bands? No, I have not. I'm going to have to set up something. Okay, I'm going to answer one more. I know we're over time. Sorry. This is from Phil Walesby, KI4PHR. He says, I would like to become a patron. Can I pay for the year in one payment? No. Patron is based on a monthly payment. Now, if you would like to pay a year in one payment, just use the tip jar once a year. And I would be most grateful for that. The tip jar is, go to dcastler.com/support. And you'll find the tip jar in the upper left-hand corner. and just use the tip jar for that. And thank you, Phil. I appreciate that. Okay, we've gone overtime, but boy, this has sure been interesting. All right. We had a great thing. Let's see. We have 145. This is weird. It's missing a whole bunch of time in here. But we peaked out at 150 viewers. Thank you all so very much. Send your questions to hamradioanswers@gmail.com. If for some reason it gets rejected, let me know. Or comment at ke0og.net, not .com or .org, .net/ask-dave. All right, we'll see you then. Until next time, 73.